Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good day and welcome to everyone joining us for today's InterAction Global Seminar Series featuring Dr. David W. Jacobs, InterAction Client Advisor. This month's webinar is Driving Change Management Momentum. My name is Dave and I'm a marketing associate with LexisNexis, and I will be your host for today's session. This webinar series is complimentary to our clients and is offered at 3 different times throughout the day, allowing options to participate from anywhere in the world. Today, David will discuss how to set realistic goals and strategies for your CRM implementation repositioning. 2, how to define CRM participation and what to do with that information. 3, the critical change management tools and templates needed for success. 4, how the behavioral approach is an important accelerator to traditional change management. And 5, how to keep the change management elements together for sustained success. All of our attendees will be in listen-only mode for the duration of our presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them via the questions pane located on your webinar control panel. During the last 15 minutes of the webinar, David will answer your questions. Please note that we are recording today's event and all attendees will receive an email with a link to the recording and slides. Also, there is a brief survey at the end of our webinar today that we ask you to please take a moment to complete. Your feedback will help us in planning our future events. Well, David, at this time, I will turn the webinar over to you.
Thank you, David. So in his book, Transition Point, From Steam to the Singularity, Sean Cooley said the paradox of change is that while everyone says they want it, not many people actually like it, and even less want to lead it. Good afternoon, my name is David Jacobs. I'm a Senior Client Advisor at InterAction. I'm going to assume by your attendance at this webinar that your firm has given some thought to this vexing issue of CRM adoption, either as part of an implementation or repositioning of CRM at your firm. Furthermore, I wouldn't be surprised if some of you, perhaps most of you, view this topic skeptically, thinking that I will offer pie-in-the-sky ideas that may work in theory, but likely not work in practice. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Elevating your CRM adoption rates does require work. And so what I offer today is an outline or framework that you can choose to follow to hold activated. Each layer supports the layer above, and we then have alignment throughout. So now let's pinpoint our overarching business and CRM strategy. So a very recent poll of CRM users cited by Capterra found that 47% of respondents said that CRM usage has a substantial impact on client retention. And an equal said that CRM usage helped with increasing client satisfaction. I'll repeat that. 47% said that CRM usage then offer word of mouth advertising. And according to ThinkJar, it is 6 to 7 times more expensive to attract a new client than it is to retain an existing one. What's more, the probability of selling to an existing client is 14 times higher than the probability of selling to a new client. And from an alignment perspective, as we covered a moment ago, mapping your plan to increase client satisfaction ensures that everything else you do will invariably line up with and support this focus. And finally, I like to believe that even the most stubborn fee earner can get behind an initiative to increase client satisfaction. So now that we've selected our puzzle, our next step is to turn that puzzle box upside down and pour the contents of that puzzle onto a table so we can get a full sense of the task before us. We need to understand both the challenges we're likely to encounter and assess our readiness to move forward. And we'll begin by examining the CRM industry as a whole, which is to be wide-eyed about the industry's long-standing adoption challenges. So take a look at this quote here, and I want you to zero in on the term complexity. Hard, not easily done, not easily understood. So I spoke with a marketing manager very recently who said to me that CRM is complex because no one really knows for sure what components these systems need to contain to be successful. And then she went on to say that if you're fortunate enough to figure that part out, then you have the next big task of keeping it segmented, accurate, up-to-date, and duplicate-free. And then she said if you have that part taken care of, the remaining question is, will people actually use it? So the question now is whether there is research or numbers out there to support this notion that CRM is challenging and complex. And according to RedSpire, nearly 50% of CRM projects fail due to slow user adoption. Now keep in mind, RedSpire didn't define the term slow for the purposes of this study, but nonetheless, those firms that fall into this category likely never realize full-scale adoption. And a second study, also according to RedSpire, found that almost 70% of CRM implementation project managers expect that their staff, I repeat, their staff will be cynical about using a CRM solution. So make no mistake about it, these are compelling headwinds, but are by no means insurmountable. So let's dig a bit deeper into these failures, these poor adopters, and these cynics. And look here, the main reasons for such a poor adoption rates. And you can see that CRM technology, the one furthest to the right, does not even crack the top three. But what these numbers do speak to is the organizational change aspect referred to in the previous slide. And to change an organization, you need to change the culture, which is defined as shared assumptions, values, and beliefs which govern how people behave in an organization. Such that if your people don't believe in or value your CRM strategy, which hopefully is a byproduct of your business plan, which hopefully is derived from your firm's strategic goals and objectives, which we covered a moment ago, then the deck is stacked against you. So our readiness to move forward will be informed in part by this force field analysis diagram developed by Kurt Lewin, known as the father of modern social psychology. So this technique that Kurt developed allows us to identify and analyze the positive and negative factors of a situation to help us to achieve our objective. So as I'm sitting in a chair here today, the only way that I fall out of this chair is either applying greater gravitational forces onto myself or somebody breaks one of the legs of the chair. So this is a similar concept to what we want to apply. So to illustrate this graphically, we begin with a clear and realistic definition of where we are currently. And then we also identify where we want to go, the future state, and then what we need to do to get there. So at the current state, we've identified that a change is needed, and we create the motivation to change. However, motivation is intrinsic to an individual. I cannot motivate you, nor can you motivate me. But we can create the conditions, the messages, and the environment that may influence you to want to change. So at this stage, Lewin encourages us to examine the way things are done around here and challenge the status quo. In the process of doing that, hopefully we can start to remove restraining forces that prevent us from moving forward and then start to add driving forces. Because we need to do this so that we can move toward a new and desired behavior. And then once we achieve that state, we want to set that new behavior or that behavior as the new normal. So as we build out this force field analysis, it's important to identify as many factors that will influence the change that you possibly can, and then assign a strength to each factor. In this example, the scale was applied of 1 to 5, 5 representing the highest strength. Some questions that you probably want to ask your team to identify forces that will influence the change are: what business benefit will the change deliver? Who supports the change? Who's against it? Do you have the resources to make the change work? What costs and risks are involved, and what business processes will be affected? And in this example, the firm has a challenge before them because their change will likely be mired in inertia because their restraining forces exceed their driving forces. And looking at these restraining forces, one likely realizes that the best way to address these and hopefully move them over to the driving forces column is to focus on a change management strategy, which we'll talk about next. Okay, so we're now ready to assemble the edge pieces of our jigsaw puzzle. And constructing your border gives you a defined space in which to work as you build out your change management strategy. But it also allows you to not only define, but also contain the requirements for CRM use. And I stress contain because experience planning is not blue sky requirements gathering. Instead, we want to conduct this exercise within the framework or focus on improving client satisfaction. So during this experience planning phase, we get internal stakeholder input that we basically translate into a system design. However, we need to be very careful to not fall into a trap known as the cheerleader effect, meaning we don't want to fall in love with our change to the point that we oversell it, which can be corrosive to trust. We need to be very realistic and authentic in our stakeholder discussions where we call out any requests they make for capabilities that fall outside of our immediate strategy or focus. We certainly want to parking lot those requests and add them to a potential later phase initiative. By doing so, we will cultivate trust, which is the currency of change communications, with our stakeholders and increase our overall likelihood for success. And near the end of this experience planning process, we absolutely need to define CRM participation in terms of not only depth and breadth of participation, but also contribution versus consumption. So when I hear my InterAction clients say that the fee earners are not using CRM, or said another way, are not participating in the firm's CRM program, the first thing that enters my mind is, what does that mean? Does it mean that they've disabled their CRM interface? Is the interface enabled but not being used? If it's being used, are they not contributing information? Are they not consuming information? We need to ask, how does the firm define participation? And this graphic provides a basic, simplified range of fee earner CRM participation points. The breadth line, as you can see, involves more consumption-oriented behavior because automation is by and large handling the contribution of data, or it is delegated, as is commonly the case with list population activities shown at the far right. And the depth line is where we find heavier engagement, where the fee earner is both manually contributing and consuming CRM information, such as with the recording of business development activities, working with CRM in the context of client service teams, second from the bottom, or industry groups. This is where I recommend your fee earners start. Let's get them started primarily along the breadth line in the consumption mode, while leveraging reminders for things such as client reviews, which is certainly in keeping with our improving client satisfaction strategy. So back to our jigsaw puzzle. It's now time to sort the puzzle pieces by color in preparation for executing on our change management strategy. And what this means is we're organizing the pieces of our change management strategy in